Hello. Welcome to the Hotline Live with Record Sport with myself, Daniel Corr, the one and only Keith Jackson. What a game,
Wow.
Keith. Aye.
I mean, what a cup final we've just witnessed there today. That was, it had just about everything. I've got to say, commend both sides because they really served up. And we always get excited about Derby Day in this city and the idea of Celtic and Rangers coming up against each other in a cup final. It's going to be an occasion. Mm-hmm. You don't always get the match.
Yeah,
we just got an absolute blinder of a football game. Terrific.
I said to you before we come on, I can't even really recall a game that's up there with that in terms of an Old Firm, certainly cup final.
Well, I mean, remember they went to penalties when Mark Warburton.
That's right. That was a semi. Aye,
that was a semi-final. But no, in terms of the actual sheer scale of the drama that we just got there.
It was so dramatic.
It was just top notch.
We will talk about everything in detail, but I kind of wanted to start on Rangers, if that's okay, just because I think it's fair to say it was definitely Rangers' best performance this season.
Yeah.
And where did that come from? I mean,
well, it has been coming, hasn't it?
Last few weeks.
We sat there last week and having, I think, vast majority of people were looking at this final a few weeks ago as how many are Celtic going to win it by. And in many respects, although Rangers have left with another hard luck story and, Celtic have dancing off into the ticker tape parade with yet another trophy, it's almost like a redemption derby, that one today for Rangers.
Aye.
That's what I've just been writing about for my column. You feel as if, yes, another defeat, and that's 6 goals now that Clement has had, but that was much more like what the Rangers supporters would be looking for from their team in terms of making it competitive. He got it spot on in the first half as well because they swamped the middle of the pitch. They were forcing Celtic, who couldn't play through Cal McGregor. And we've all said that. How many times have we sat and said, if Celtic play through Cal McGregor will get better Rangers than that. So he devised a tactical strategy which kind of smothered the middle of Celtic's team, meant the fullbacks and the centre-halves were having to come out and try and make the passes out from the back, and Rangers were springing on them, almost like setting little traps. I lost count the amount of times that they got interceptions. That's where the first goal came from Barami. But more and more you could see the Rangers' confidence levels rising, and to the point that when Celtic then found their stride a little bit in the second half and get in front, you expect Rangers, from the evidence that we've seen over the last while, you would expect Rangers then to melt a little bit, and they didn't. Mm-hmm. They came back, they kind of regrouped. So, and by the way, that'll be the sorest defeat imaginable for Rangers right now. But see, once the dust settles on it, I think they will look back on that as, not an enjoyable experience, but it's a vindication.
There's coming of age game, something like that.
Well, let's not go that far with this Rangers side, but certainly they are so much more better equipped to go into these games than they were just a few weeks ago, and that all comes down again to the changes in personnel, the fact that they're harder to predict going forward. And by the way, although he was on the losing side, I think Raskin was the best player on the part. I thought he was gargantuan in there. So there's as painful as this one will be for Rangers, there are so many positives. This is just this completely unpredictable thing about Derby Day and this. You would never expect that Clement could come out in the losing side of this and yet go away kind of with his credentials enhanced.
Well,
and that seems to be the case.
You mentioned Clement, and we've already got a few comments. Drew McMaster, watching live on Facebook, he still says Clement has to go. Drew's a regular Rangers fan as well. To not be able to beat Celtic in 6 attempts is huge failure. No trophies for effort. And I get, like, to play devil's advocate.
That's harsh, but
Well, they were great today, but he's 6 attempts. He's not beaten Celtic.
No, and at no point has he really looked like properly. I mean, yeah, there was a great game, wasn't it, at Ibrox in the league, but he went in a lap of honour when they drew that one. Mm-hmm. It'd be a bit like going in a lap of honour on the after the 120 minutes before the penalties were taken today. But no, I think, and I've been a harsh critic of Clement, and I've described myself as a Clement sceptic, and then I think I probably went further than that at one point. where I just felt there was no way back for him. I actually see their signs, and I'm really surprised by it because I didn't think it was retrievable. But whether it's by luck, by design, by accident, I'm not sure. But he's stumbling across what looks like a decent Rangers team with attacking variations. And they really put up a fight to Celtic today that I don't think really many people would have expected them to be capable of.
Don't think so.
So that's all in that's all in the tick boxes for Clement. There's a big cross there because it's another trophy. It was the one trophy that he managed to win last season. It's now under lock and key across the city. Celtic have got all the major trophies now back in the cabinet, and you have to say they're in very good shape to make sure that all three of them remain there at the end of this season. But I think they'll look at this Rangers side now and think, oof, they'll give us a game. And I don't know if that was the case just 2, 3, 4 weeks ago.
Aye, and of course they play each other again on January the 2nd.
Yeah, well, I mean, roll on.
Aye.
I mean, if that's what we're going to get when these two collide, then roll on January 2nd. It's a rivalry, and it's an intense rivalry, but kind of almost just by postcode.
Yeah.
Over the last while, because Rangers haven't been in the same financial district as Celtic or anywhere near them on the pitch, but they've put together a team there that looks capable of causing Celtic problems, and that means that, you know, as you go on, I think the Rangers can forget about the league title this year, but they need to try and claw back some ground. And, you know, it all rolls on to Ibrox, and as you said, January the 2nd, and that could be another terrific 90 minutes.
Everyone watching at home, we really appreciate you getting involved. We've had tons of comments already. A lot of them, Keith, about some of the refereeing decisions today.
Okay.
We have a resident referee, Des
Bring him
Roache.
on.
Des, there he is. How's it going, Des? Des, I believe you've muted yourself, which you'll need to unmute. I can't do it.
Again.
There we are, Des.
There you go, Des.
Just as well you weren't working the VAR.
Listen, I can't work a laptop.
That's what I mean. What was your verdict on that? I actually thought John Beaton and his officials got just about everything spot on today. I thought it was very well officiated.
Yeah, I've got to give him credit. I thought the whole game, everything that he gave. I know there was 11 cautions in the game. But I don't think anyone contested any of them.
Mm-hmm.
They were all stick-ons. I mean, what was the first caution? 23 minutes before Balogun got one for the pull down on Hatate, which was obvious. So there was nothing really contentious in the game that John didn't deal with, and his team. But I know everything's going to come down to one decision.
Which one?
The one that they're looking for a penalty on the
Liam Scales on.
Scales on
Scales one, yeah.
Hadji.
Yeah.
Was it Hadji?
We've had. It was it
wasn't Hadji.
Was it Tierney?
Aye.
Tierney.
Paul Joseph's written in saying clear penalty for a pull outside the box. Clearly, some people don't know the rules. I mean, to me, Des.
Where are you on that? Where are you on this one, Des? Because that does look very much like on the line.
Yes. So the laws of the game state that if you are impeding and pulling a player outside the penalty area and it continues inside the penalty area, then it's a penalty kick. Now, going by that footage that we're seeing now, John Scales clearly has a hold of Tierney. His foot's on the line. The line is part of the penalty area, so therefore it should have been a penalty.
Wow.
So you think Rangers...
So wait a minute, Des, right? We've just sat here and said, brilliant, well done, John Beaton and your team.
I'm saying
absolutely
brilliant,
terrific. And you're telling me they've missed a stick-on penalty kick?
Unfortunately, yes.
When it was 3 each, I think. When it was 3 each, right? So that would have been...
Look, I'm not a sympathiser. But you've got to go by fact. And going by that, the factual letter of the law is that's a penalty kick.
Is it also a red card then?
No, not necessarily. No, not every foul, because I was getting a couple of messages from folk, and also I was doing the stuff with you guys live during the game. Not every foul happens to be a yellow card. You do have contact. It's a physical game. You are allowed to make a foul. In that moment in time, I think John Scales got away with one. I don't understand why it
Scales.
wasn't. Liam Scales. John Scales, that was Tottenham and Liverpool, wasn't it? I don't understand why VAR didn't pick up, because that's why VAR's there. They're there to pick up these obvious errors, and they've got the benefit of the hindsight of the camera and to slow it down and stuff like that. So I was very surprised that wasn't then given, because I wasn't aware of it until I seen the stills.
And just to be absolutely clear, is what you're saying is if it's on the line,
yes,
it should be a penalty kick. That constitutes inside the penalty box.
Yes.
Wow.
The line is part of the line is part of the area that it marks.
Wow. We have a lot of comments on that, Keith. A lot of people getting in touch to say, why didn't VAR pick up on it? And it's one of those things, even though we've got a top ref here with us, we can't really explain that.
Do you know, I'll be honest, I thought from looking at the replays that it happens just outside the penalty box.
I thought that too.
And that he comes down just outside the penalty box. I mean, it's inches, but that's what my eyes told me when I was watching it.
That's what I thought. But then see the graphs.
I thought it was the right decision.
I did too, to be fair. But
But
then you listen to Des.
And listen to Des and looking at the pictures, that could be a potential problem for... it was Alan Muir was in charge of VAR.
Yes, Alan Muir was there. And Alan's vastly experienced. I mean, he just came off the top flight last season. And that's why I thought it was a great appointment for Alan to be there to support John. Because I thought John, on the pitch, John had a magnificent game. There was nothing, as I said to you earlier. He managed the game within the game. All cautions were stick-ons. Like you guys, when I first seen it, I didn't think it was a penalty. But it was only when I was showing the stills, I thought, do you know what? That one wasn't right.
There's a comment there from AJSC watching live on YouTube. Scales isn't touching Czerny in that image. Still need video. So there's plenty of comments in there, Keith. One thing that's for sure is that nothing's sure. we can't really call it either way.
Yeah, and do you know, for that reason, it's very difficult to come down like a ton of bricks on either the match referee, who's got no chance. I mean, if we're having to go through this conversation and look at, from a dozen different angles and all that, he's got no chance. But I just wonder in a case like that, Des, what's the protocol? Should they have looked at it? Should they have drawn on a line themselves? I mean, how are they meant to? The line's pretty obvious because it's a big white one and it's on the edge of the 18-yard box.
Yeah, I don't think you need the lines drawn there. I think what you need to do is you need to get John across. Certainly, if it was me,
I would
ask the referee to come across and say, "Look, I'm
you
unsure about
look
this."
at that.
You might need to look at it. If John didn't want to take it on a review, absolutely fine, no problem at all. But I think it's your duty as a VAR, when you've got that technology and you're looking at it thinking there's a wee bit of seed of doubt in there. And it was certainly a seed of doubt as soon as I seen it. So at the time, not a problem at all. Got on with it. I think 99.9% of the population were agreeing with us, both Celtic and Rangers fans. But when you see that, then that's when the question comes.
Well, that's a bit of a black mark against the referee and his helpers then, because I was looking at it, Des, going, I think he's done really well. And I know that you guys talk about the responsibility you feel to keep 11 players on the pitch. And that is, something that, that referees hope to achieve, especially in the bigger games. I think he's done really well in the way that yes, there was a lot of bookings, but I thought he managed it really well. And it was quite a tousy old affair. I mean, there was... two teams rattling into each other. There was a lot of tackles.
I thought the pitch was awful as well.
Pitch wasn't good. So in that respect, I thought we'd be having a quite a kind of comfy conversation here about, well done, everybody, because that it could have been a game like that could have been easy to get away from John Beaton. Mm-hmm. Some referees, Des, I think, might agree with me, when the tackles start flying, the cards start coming out, and all of a sudden they feel rushed into big decisions. And I thought he did well to stay calm and stay on top of it in terms of the kind of to and fro in between the two sides, certainly in the middle of the pitch.
I completely agree. I said at half-time that the first half couldn't have went any better. But we always say in football, it's the next...
Was that 1-0 Rangers, Des?
That was... I always said, it couldn't have went any better for the refereeing team. But the next 45 minutes is where you have to work hard. And you have to step it up, because it doesn't matter whether it's Rangers winning 1-0 or Celtic winning 1-0. You know the opposition are going to come out all guns blazing. And to be fair, Celtic they scored in the 55th and 59th minute. So straight away, it's like, right, let's get a hold of this. And I mentioned it as we were going through the game, saying you need to keep your mettle here. You need to keep concentrated. You need to keep a hold of the game. And that's exactly what he does. And a lot of things go unseen, not just because he's blowing whistles and giving fouls and yellow cards. A lot of stuff's done unseen. He'll be running by players and he'll be talking to them and managing that way through the game. He'll be talking to Callum McGregor. He'll be talking to Raskin. He'll be just manage it so it doesn't get out of hand. And yes, it looks a lot, 11 yellow cards, but the game is never out of control. So I thought he's got to be applauded. I thought he did a great game.
And you didn't fancy him for this one, Des, did you?
No, I didn't. I'm not being two-faced about it at all. No, I think our two best referees are Nick Walsh and Don Robertson, but you can't keep giving them all the top games. So it's got to go to someone. John's our most experienced referee now that Kevin Clancy's not involved in FIFA anymore. But John's our vastly experienced. He's been Category 1 since 2009. I think he's been FIFA since 2012, and he's done 8-9 Old Firm games. So yeah, he deserves to be in there. At the time, I did put my hand up and think it wasn't my first choice for the match, but I've got to give him all the credit and the applause.
What about this? There's Christopher McMullen writing in on Facebook. The whole body is out of the box except an arm. You pull an arm and go down. Is that a penalty?
Yes.
Yeah, would be, wouldn't it?
Yes.
It's like the one Aston Villa didn't get yesterday.
Aye, kind of. Well, I, when I was watching the game today, I kept thinking, I kind of hope this kicks off, because I knew we had Des on. Hope there was going to be a red card or two, but there wasn't.
I don't know if you can ask for any more from Des. Des has come on and he's basically said that John Beaton's made an absolute codger of it. Rangers were denied a stone one penalty kick, and the whole outcome of the cup final probably rested on a decision that was wrongly made. I think that's good play from Des.
I know, absolutely.
Come on and made a real impact.
Absolutely.
I've got to get my work in the morning, guys.
Is there any other instance you want to run by, Des, before we... There was the one in the first half, which I think is a no-brainer, really, Des, but it was the Diomande one, where he went down in the box, which looked like it would have been a penalty, but it was pulled back.
That was an example of really well handled.
Yeah.
Because it was a foul. It was a foul by Balogun
on
Carter Vickers.
Yep.
And I might be wrong, Des, but I think he'd blown the whistle for that foul before Diomande went down.
Yes. Yeah, he'd seen the initial incident, so therefore the subsequent incident is null and void.
Because that was one in real time. It just looked like penalty to Rangers right away.
Yeah.
But it was managed well. Anything else you want to run by, Des, before we...
No, I think that's about it, isn't it, Des? I don't think there was... I mean, as you said, that one decision is the big one, and it'll be interesting to see how Rangers fans feel about that, because you've got a top official there telling you your side have been denied a stonewall penalty kick.
Well, I'll just switch my phone off for the next few hours then.
Des, thank you so much for joining us on Hotline Live. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thanks again, Des.
Cheers, Des.
Enjoy your evening. Cheers.
You too. Des Roache there, I know.
It's a bombshell.
I didn't think he was going to say that. He's explained it pretty coherently. It does sound like, by the letter of the law, it's a penalty.
Do you know something? I'd need to go back and look at it again. And I hate stills as well.
I know.
I just, in my own mind's eye, watching it on the TV, and you did get a good replay on it. I just felt it was the right decision. I felt it was outside the box.
I thought that too.
But it was real close.
That was very close, aye.
I mean, he actually comes to ground. He does fall down inside the penalty box, part of him.
Stupid foul as well. Really silly from Scales.
It was, but Czerny had done him.
Aye, had done him.
Czerny dropped the shoulder. And he was
running
running into traffic.
Who knows, aye.
But I think Scales got a bit spooked. But that's really interesting. That's really interesting to hear what Des has to say there.
Absolutely. And let us know if you're watching at home. Let us know your thoughts on that. We've got a ton of comments here, Keith, that I need to run through. Let me have a look, see what I want to throw at you next. Well, basically, there's a theme growing here in our comment section, Keith, that kind of insinuates that maybe Celtic weren't at their best today. Reese says Celtic played in second gear the whole afternoon, nowhere near our usual, and they still couldn't win. Joseph also saying we played about 30%, we'll beat them at Ibrox. I mean, do you go along with that?
Yeah, I do a little bit. But I think that was because Rangers imposed what they wanted to do upon Celtic, and they stopped Celtic playing through the middle of the pitch. You know, we all know that Cal McGregor's the cog, and they get around about him, they suffocated Celtic in that area of the pitch. Now that, you've got to say, is good tactics, good strategy from a manager who was really under a bit of pressure. But I agree, I actually, and this is why, you know, a few weeks ago, I think Celtic were at peak Celtic when they annihilated Aberdeen in the semi-final. A few days after that, they took Leipzig apart in the Champions League. I thought Celtic were operating at a different level at that point.
Yeah.
I think they've come down. I think there's been a drop-off. I don't know if it's fatigue.
That's what I was going to say. Is it fatigue? You know, it's a long, hard season.
If it's fatigue, then, you know, you would like to think that Brendan Rodgers would be on top of that. Would you necessarily name the same starting 11 as you did on Tuesday night in the Champions League if you feel that fatigue was a factor? I don't know. But Celtic aren't just as impressive as they were at that point when they were just obliterating people. And so for that reason, plus the fact that Rangers have come in the other direction, I went into today's game thinking, I think we'll get a real contest here. But it was an even better contest than I expected.
Scott McIntyre, watching live on Facebook, says it's the worst we've played all season and still won. That's the winner's mentality.
There is a big element of that about Celtic. Celtic just do not know when to down tools. They're just not going to do it. They have a captain in Cal McGregor, even though he wasn't as influential as he would have liked to be. He inspires those around him. He has this mindset that he just will not settle for second best. He will not settle for second prizes. He has to win, and he drives that dressing room. And they all buy into that mindset.
He's never lost a cup final.
It's astonishing.
Absolutely incredible.
It's astonishing. So, you know, in that respect, what happened today is what always happens. Celtic won and they went away with a trophy. But I just think there's more to what we watched, the whole narrative, the fabric of the 90 minutes there. I do think Rangers are improving, and game by game, whereas Celtic, I think, have levelled off a little bit since I think those games we're talking about was kind of start of November.
Yep.
Leipzig was bonfire night, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
So I think Celtic have dropped a little bit over that last month, and over the last 2-3 weeks, Rangers look like different Rangers. So,
but will that not hurt Rangers more?
I'm sure it will.
Played fantastic. Celtic were.
I'm sure it will.
And Celtic still won.
I'm sure it will, and the same things will get flung at James Tavernier as well. You know, the captain that you know, close but no cigar. This is something that Rangers are going to have to try and rid themselves of, this image.
And on Tavernier, big call to play him as well.
Massive call to play him.
Yep.
And by the way, I don't think, well, certainly from all the discussions and all the shows that we've been, was there anybody out there that said stick with Tavernier? I didn't see it. If there was, I know that I didn't. I said
I agree.
Sterling should have been inserted into that team weeks in advance to get a run of games to play that position, because what you can't afford to do is let Maeda have a run at Tavernier again, because everybody knows what happens. And I think I said it early, redemption derby. There's an element of that for James Tavernier, because he looked Maeda in the eye today and he actually gave him a real game. He didn't give him an inch. Maeda gets his goal, but it came about because his Balogun should have done better there. It wasn't a Tavernier mistake. And actually, I think he stuck to him, and he stuck to his task.
He was determined to do.
And it was a real... listen, do you know what? What a great battle it was to watch between the pair of them. The pair of them emptied their tanks. And of course, Maeda's the guy... You just know at the end of the day he's going to have the energy. He steps up, takes the last minute, or takes the last penalty kick, and Celtic disappear, as I said, off with another trophy. But in terms of the individual battles and some of the performances across the pitch, the Tavernier Maeda one was really interesting. And what I have to say is, having said that, I would have probably been looking to get Sterling into that position, because Tavernier just looks like his head is fried at the thought of coming up against Maeda. enormous credit to James Tavernier then for standing up to that and coming through it, even though he ended up with another second prize. And some credit to Clement, because I wouldn't have stuck with Tavernier for that.
No,
but Tavernier did fine.
James, who's watching live on YouTube, says Maeda's goal was brilliant, and I want to touch on that because although it was on Balogun, it wasn't on Tavernier. That was unbelievable, that goal.
Yeah, I don't think I'm not sure how cleanly he finishes.
Really? I need to see it again. But
I think it's his first touch. He takes it off Balogun's toe. He then has an absolutely sensational second touch, just to set the ball for himself.
Yeah.
And when he hits it, I'm not sure that he really makes the cleanest of contacts, but it's right through Butland and impossible one for the keeper to save.
I'd need to see it again, but at the time I thought it was.
By the way, here's
class.
an issue. So many talking points on this. Mm-hmm. But now that I mentioned Butland, what was he doing taking Rangers' 5th penalty kick?
Some penalty though.
It's a sensational penalty kick. But what does that tell you? Now, if you've got, and we're talking about Rangers trying to get rid of this reputation for close but no cigar merchants. How come there's another 5-6 players that ended that match that were behind Jack Butland in terms of I'll put my hand up to take a penalty
The
kick?
one that stands out to me is Dessers, number 9 striker. I mean, there's obviously one of two things has happened. Either Dessers went up and said, "I don't want it, let the goalie go ahead of me," or the manager said, "I'd rather the goalie takes it." Neither are great.
Sorry, sit down, Cyril.
Exactly. So
I found that really. I mean, it was superb penalty kick, and maybe he trains. Maybe they see him in training every day, and he's rattling these in, so they've got absolute faith.
That was a great
but
penalty.
If I'm an outfield player there, I'm a wee bit embarrassed for myself.
Aye.
I would because you've really got to put your hand up. You've got to want to put your hand up.
Aye.
What was going on there? Hands up, I need a rub. My calf's gone. I mean that something about that didn't sit particularly well with me. And I wonder if as I said, these Rangers players have a bit of a reputation for, do they bottle it on the big stage? Or do they never quite seem to get there? Well, if you've got 4, 5, 6 players that are hiding when it's coming down to taking a penalty kick in a League Cup final, that might be a slight concern.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. Just with the Dessers thing, as I say, neither are good for him.
No,
neither scenario. And
I could excuse me Raskin, because I don't think I'm not sure he could have walked to the penalty spot from the halfway line. I think he ran himself to an absolute standstill. So
Yilmaz as well. It was a poor penalty.
Yilmaz was.
It was the only poor penalty.
Raskin
really.
didn't take a penalty. That's what I'm saying. I can excuse him for maybe saying, well, maybe I can sit the first 5 out, boss.
But apart from him,
Yilmaz, if Schmeichel doesn't go the right way, it looks like a great penalty.
Aye.
It's a good save. It's a real strong hand. It wasn't particularly firmly struck, so it wasn't a desperately difficult save, but when he chose the right way and he got his arm across, and it's a good save.
Going back to Celtic just before I know we're
By the way, I got another thing. What about the save that he has from Diamondi?
Oh, fantastic
That's a
save.
stunning
and
save.
he'll be absolutely livid, Schmeichel, because he pulls off that save, top
Ball
class.
comes back into
and
the
it
box
comes
and
in, he
Diamondi
concedes.
scores.
And you could see him going mad at his defenders, and rightly so, because it was a silly goal to concede. But
that was Rangers scoring. Another thing, that was Rangers scoring from a corner kick. That doesn't happen.
Aye, that's true. Aye, first time in, was it not?
Well, it's this season since April or something.
180 corners or something like that.
They had about 142 corners today.
I know.
But that was the one that they took short, and they got a goal
right.
from it.
Aye.
Was it Egaman went out to take it?
And
I think he was just trying to get across to take it quickly. They he's worked a short one with Tavernier, whips it in, it's a good ball into the front post. Not sure about the Celtic defending. Was it Scales or I can't remember who was.
I think it was Engels, actually.
Was it Engels?
I think it was Engels.
I think you're right. Not great, but it's a great turn from Diamondi and
Bit of help off Kyogo Studs.
Yeah.
Just going back to Celtic, I know we're bouncing about all over the place, but what did you make of the decision to pull Austin Trusty off at half time?
I actually thought it was a very good decision. Not because I thought Trusty was having a difficult game. He wasn't really defensively. But what Celtic were having a problem was bringing the ball out from the back. And I think Brendan Rodgers identified that Rangers are shutting down Callum McGregor. and I think that Liam Scales has got a better range of passing than Trusty.
Yeah.
So he's defensively solid enough. By the way, nearly scores, brilliant header.
I nearly scored right away, didn't he?
So I think I think it was a good substitution. It worked, and I think it helped in terms of Celtic playing out from the back, because there is just a little bit more range about what Scales can do with the ball at his feet.
And the other thing, just to mention with the Celtic team, is that, I mean, it's kind of an embarrassment of riches. They brought on Engels today. Obviously, Bernardo got the nod ahead of him. Engels did set up Kuhn's goal.
By the way, massive point. We've talked about it till we're blue in the face since the start of the season about Brendan Rodgers building the squad depth and having quality and being able to replace quality with quality. Didn't have Luke McCown today, which, by the way, he would have come on if he wasn't cup tied. But when you look at that, today is the perfect example. 120 minutes, people are falling down. Everybody's got cramp. People are everybody has emptied the tank. But when Rangers have to throw in fresh bodies, it's Kieran Dowell.
No harm to him, but it's not the same. It's not the same level.
Yeah, and that to me, Celtic probably won that from the bench today.
Yeah,
because they were able to bring on better quality. I was surprised that Danilo didn't start for Rangers, and he got his goal as well. So, but again, I would have said that. I would have said that's probably a mistake not starting with Danilo, but it wasn't, because tactically he had Rangers set up correctly to try and pickpocket Celtic, force them into playing the style of play that they weren't comfortable with, shutting down McGregor and then springing on them. And if they did that once for the goal, well, they probably did that 4 or 5 times before that as well. So my idea would have probably been start with Danilo and play Egerman
kind of the left, maybe
off the left. But he didn't do that. He played Barami, and Barami had a fair bit of joy in that role. He was getting really close to McGregor, and he was also picking off interceptions and getting Rangers breaking on Celtic. So tactically, again, that's good marks for Philip Clement.
Steve Kelly, watching live on YouTube, simply says it's all about moral victories and toenail penalties. And I'm bringing it up just purely because if you're an Rangers fan, all right, they were great today, they were much improved, they took it to penalty. They still lost. Do
you know what? I'll be interested, because obviously as soon as the match finished, he battered into the studio, and I had some 1,000 odd words to write as well. So I haven't heard the after-match stuff yet, and I'll be interested to hear how Philip Clement handles it.
Yep.
Because I think sometimes, and less would be better from him today. Just let the performance do the talking.
Itself,
I think that sometimes he makes a rod for his own back with some of his comments, and it'll be interesting to see, how he responds to this one. I think he's got a lot to feel pretty good about. Don't go and ruin it all by saying something stupid, Philip.
I'm going to give you a right hospital pass here.
Oh, aye.
Do you think Celtic deserved to win the cup final today?
Do you know, ultimately, yes.
Right.
Because, Rangers are trying really hard to close the gap, but the gap is there. Celtic have got the better quality. I don't think that was Celtic anywhere near their best. A lot of that I give Rangers credit for imposing their game plan on to Celtic. But ultimately, and it goes back to the discussions we've been having since the start of the season, Brendan Rodgers has built this squad now to be durable, to be able to make changes without the quality dropping off. And ultimately, towards the end of that game, Rangers were having to rely on players that you probably know they can't rely on. So that means that Celtic, in terms of it being a squad game, were better equipped for it and probably deserved it.
And
I mean, they are the best team in the country.
Yeah.
And they have been the best team in the country by a distance. But I think what's encouraging for Rangers is that I don't know how many Rangers fans out there really thought that their team a couple of weeks ago would be capable of taking a cup final to Celtic the way that they did this afternoon.
And mention a couple of weeks ago, I think you and I think just about everyone watching on the feed was certain that Clement was going to be gone any day now.
Yeah.
That he'd be gone, he'd be consigned to the history books.
Listen, I wrote it. I wrote that he's
But so where does this leave him
an
then?
almost impossible position here. It's the ghosts of Celtic present and past that they have to come up against. And I said he needs to avoid defeat in the 2 games against Postecoglou and Brendan Rodgers. And he has.
He has, eh?
He has avoided defeat.
Kinda.
Well, you know, you're a hard man if you say, well, that was a defeat because you lost in penalty kicks.
To be fair, a lot of people thought it was going to be a bloodbath. Those games
I thought it was going to be a pasting from
2 short ones,
Postecoglou and a battering from Brendan Rodgers, and it was neither. Rangers really stood up to Spurs. I felt were the better team on the night, which is quite an achievement. And then, you know, they've gone again a couple of days later. Not a great deal of time for resting and all that. I hope that's not something that Philip Clement clings to, because he doesn't need to. Did
you think that had any influence in today?
Probably.
A wee bit?
Probably. Yeah, the Celtic had an extra 48 hours, probably helped get the legs sorted out. But again, do you know what? See, when it comes right down to it, it's not by accident that Brendan Rodgers has such a strong bench behind him, and Philip Clement doesn't. So, and Philip Clement has kind of stumbled into this sort of. He's relying on players that he kind of written off previously. Hadji, terrific again today. Yep. I thought he really took the game to Celtic. Raskin couldn't get a kick under Clement for his first few months.
But sorry to jump in, but that we've said that Hadji was bombed out. I know with the contract, but he also said, "No, he's not part of my plan." Raskin couldn't get a game. Mm-hmm. Maybe if he'd done all this 3 months ago.
Exactly, exactly right. And that is something when you examine Clement. And I've been saying it for ages. These guys would make your team better.
Yeah.
And it's been proven to be the case. It is baffling to me how it took just the manager just as long as it has done to realise it. But again, you know, he's got the new options in Cherny, Bairami, Egaman. Now there's another one. This kid's nowhere near first team ready. Kind of looks as if he might have been.
He might have been, just a wee bit. I mean, okay, that's the Rangers side of it. Celtic, to finish up with them, look, they've won another trophy. They are now in possession, as we sit here, of all 3 domestic trophies in the country.
That's also 119 trophies, which puts them ahead of Rangers.
Absolutely.
Which is, you know,
I'm sure Rangers fans
in a city
that.
which thrives on one-upmanship.
Absolutely. But they've got a lot of big games coming up. I'm obviously thinking of the 2 Champions League games they've got left, one of which is Aston Villa. But would that... Any concern for Brendan Rodgers how close the game was today? Or just you're like, Rangers are a decent team, it was a close game?
I think it should concern them, not because of the one-off 90 minutes, because these things happen. It wasn't a great pitch. Rangers were, made themselves really difficult to play through today. But Celtic at full tilt would handle it better than they did today. And that, as I said, I really think that they hit peak Celtic around about the turn of November, when the first few days in November, I think they were really looking phenomenal. I don't think they've looked phenomenal since then. I think they've been a bit patchy. That should concern Brendan Rodgers, because whatever they were doing right back then, it's not replicating.
Yeah.
They do look, I don't know if it's tiredness, fatigue, I don't know what it is, but they just don't look as lively and as dangerous as they were, and they were super dangerous back then, weren't they? I mean,
tearing teams apart.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that we should cover really in this packed cup final edition of the Hotline Live? I don't think there is really. I think we've more or less covered every.
Do you know something? I'll come back to
blade
because
of
it was
grass.
just one of those games, but just things kept happening.
Aye, it was a great game. I'm still racking my brain. The 2002 Scottish Cup final was a cracker. The 3-2 game, Lovenkrands in the last minute. It was a Premier League match, I'm sure, but it was 3 each. Henrik Larsson scored twice. It was at Celtic Park. That was an unbelievable game.
Right.
I think De Boer and Arveladze scored. Just an incredible game. But see, aside from that, I think you're really struggling to find a better game than today.
A better Old Firm game.
Better Old Firm match, aye. I mean,
I had of them, and the fact that it's concluded from the penalty spot.
Aye.
I mean, that, as brutal as the penalty shootout is, it's
felt
dramatic.
fitting today.
It's a dramatic way to bring it all to a close. And listen, that was drama and more today. I actually sat and watch all again, because it was just there was so much happening.
Aye, I know.
That there probably are things that we've been sitting here. How long have we been sitting talking now?
40 minutes exactly.
And we've probably forgot about some stuff
I know.
along the way.
Well, look, thank you very much for watching at home. We really appreciate it. Thank you for the droves of comments that have come in. We'll be back to do it all again at 6 p.m. tomorrow evening. Thanks for watching, Keith. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Right. I'm glad for you.
And we'll be back tomorrow. Cheers.